Straight ahead, shutdown showdown. What's at stake and what will it take for the government to reopen? Senator Ted Cruz, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and Congressman Brandon Gill all discuss a health care issue at the center of this dispute. Challenging Abbott. We speak with Democrat Andrew White about why he's running against Governor Greg Abbott for a second time and what he sees as his biggest strength. And Trump RX. We'll look at President Trump's plan to lower the cost of prescription drugs and how it will work. Good morning, I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas starts now. Hello and welcome to Eye on Politics. Hope you're having a great Sunday. We begin with the government shutdown and the question, what will it take for Republicans and Democrats on Capitol Hill to end it? It began at 12:01 a.m. Wednesday after the Senate could not reach the 60 votes required to pass a continuing resolution to keep the government funded until November 21st. With every Republican except for one senator voting for it and most Democrats except for 3 voting against it. At the center of the dispute is whether to extend enhanced tax credits for the Affordable Care Act that are set to expire at the end of the year. I spoke with Senator Ted Cruz on Wednesday, hours after the shutdown began, and he blasted Senate Democrats.
We are unfortunately in day one of the Schumer shutdown, and I think it's been clear this was coming for some time. The House of Representatives has passed funding for the government, a clean continuing resolution that keeps the government open. In the Senate, we've taken up and voted on it multiple times. I've voted repeatedly to keep the government open, and the Democrats have lined up. Virtually every single Democrat has voted no, do not fund the government, and the result has been this government shutdown today. The Schumer shutdown is really about 2 things. Number one, it is about free health care for illegal aliens. The Democrats have decided that is the issue that they want to hang their party's future on, and they're willing to shut down the federal government in order to try to force free health care for illegal aliens. Jack, the second reason, and really the core reason why we're having a shutdown, has nothing to do with health care or policy. It has to do with politics, which is Chuck Schumer is in trouble. Several months ago, when the last government funding expired, Schumer and the Democrats worked with Republicans to keep the government open. And the left wing of the Democrat base went nuts. They got furious with Schumer. He almost lost his job. And Schumer is looking over his left shoulder at AOC. He is worried about being primaried from the left. And so this shutdown, I believe, is all about Chuck Schumer proving to the crazies on the left that he hates Donald Trump every bit as much as they do, and he's willing to shut the government down for it. What that means is this is essentially a temper tantrum by the Democrats. They will eventually relent, but I don't know when.
So as you and Republicans are blaming Democrats, I know you're not surprised when I tell you that Democrats are obviously pinning the blame on Republicans and President Trump, saying they control the White House, they control the Senate and the House, and that the last time there was a government shutdown, President Trump was in office his first term. So what do you say to that?
Well, this is where facts matter and truth matter. You're right. The last time there was a shutdown was the first Schumer shutdown. And here's the reality. To pass legislation funding the government, you need 60 votes in the Senate under the Senate filibuster rule. The House of Representatives passed what's called a clean CR. It is a continuing resolution. It has no Republican policy elements in it. It doesn't have any secret policy smuggled in. It simply says everything we were funding yesterday continues being funded today at the same level. When Chuck Schumer was majority leader and Joe Biden was president, there were 13 clean CRs, and the difference was Republicans went along with the clean CRs and didn't force a government shutdown 13 times.
So let me ask you, because one of the sticking points has also been about extending the enhanced tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, which are set to expire at the end of the year. Democrats say the premiums for everybody are going to go up, and they've been trying to force this as part of the deal. And Republicans have said, no, we'll negotiate afterwards. Where are you on this issue?
Well, look, it's clear the Democrats passed a big subsidy that was supposed to be a temporary subsidy during COVID, and that's what they're talking about. Now, President Trump has made clear that he's happy to talk with the Democrats and negotiate and address the issue of health care. And I care deeply about health care. If you look at the aftermath of Democrats' policies, you look at things like Obamacare, what it did is it dramatically increased health insurance premiums. It made health insurance unaffordable for a whole lot of Americans. And it did so because it restricted choice and drove the premiums through the roof. I would love to see reforms that lower premiums. I've been fighting to lower premiums since the very first day I arrived in the Senate. The Democrats have not focused on that. And by the way, under Obamacare, under Democrat health care policy, the health insurance companies are printing money. Their profits have more than doubled. So the health insurance companies have gotten rich, and working Texans, it's much harder to afford health insurance. But the president has also been clear he's not going to negotiate on this issue in the middle of a shutdown of the government, that the Democrats do not get to shut down the entire government and hold it hostage, that we need to open the government, which we're going to do. We need to turn the lights on and have people go back to work. And then the White House has made clear that they're happy to negotiate with the Democrats, but their solution is not going to be another Democrat solution that wastes money and raises premiums even more. We need more consumer choice and lower premiums.
Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine of Dallas blamed President Trump and Republicans for the shutdown.
Yeah, this really goes to show you just how ineffective the Republicans are when it comes to governance. We consistently talked about their obstructionism when they had the majority in the House and the Democrats controlled the Senate as well as the White House. But you know what? I've got to give it up to President Biden. President Biden never gave up. President Biden consistently called in all four corners, which would be the leaders of the House, minority and majority, and the leaders of the Senate, majority and minority. And he consistently tried to make sure that he told the line and did not give up things that were absolutely critical, but he would give some. And that's what negotiations look like. It's usually a situation where no one is exactly happy. But at the end of the day, he felt like the most responsible thing he could do was to make sure that he could keep the government open. And I can say for the last 4 years, we were able to enjoy what stability looked like in every sense this administration swore in January. It has been nothing but chaos for everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean not just the people that didn't vote for him and knew better and believed in Project 2025 and were okay with having a Black woman sit in the Oval Office, but I am talking about those people that decided that they were going to support his candidacy. Those people in rural America, which we know that rural America uses more SNAP benefits than urban America. And so ultimately, if this goes past 30 days, rural America is going to be hit pretty hard. And so, yes, this is only further evidence of what we all knew. The last time we had a shutdown was under this same president. So there is a trend.
So while you are and Democrats are blaming Republicans, not surprisingly, Republicans are blaming Senate Democrats. They're calling this the Schumer shutdown,
Yeah.
saying that Republicans in the House wanted to keep the government open, the president wanted to keep the government open, but the Senate Democrats and Chuck Schumer didn't have the votes, didn't come with the votes because, as you know, 60 votes are necessary in the Senate. And so they're blaming the Democrats for that. And I remember you criticized Senator Schumer's leadership in March when he voted to continue funding the government. So what do you say to all that?
I absolutely do. And what I say is what Donald Trump said years ago, before he was ever elected or running for president. He said, if the government shuts down, it is the president's fault. These are his words. And so I am happy to repeat his own words.
So let's talk about these enhanced tax credits that are set to expire as part of the Affordable Care Act at the end of December. I know Democrats have been pushing to extend those. I spoke with Republican Congressman Keith Self of McKinney last week about this, and he said no Republican ever voted for them. Only Democrats did. They were meant to be temporary. They were COVID era. COVID is over. Temporary is over, he said. And how do you respond to that?
I think that we're still in a healthcare crisis, and it's only going to be compounded because of the decisions and because of the votes of the Republicans. We know that once the big ugly bill takes full effect, that there is $1 trillion, $1 trillion that will be sucked out of the healthcare ecosystem. And that's just from the healthcare standpoint. We're not talking about the research dollars, right? And so, no matter if you're on Medicaid, Medicare, whether or not you get your healthcare through the Affordable Care Act, or whether you have some amazing private health insurance, everyone's health insurance and healthcare is going to go up. So, to create an additional problem for people to be able to access healthcare and then to fall back and say, well, COVID is gone. Well, guess what? You guys have created yet another catastrophic situation for the American people that is going to make this unaffordable for so many reasons.
Republican Congressman Brandon Gill said he and other House Republicans did their job to keep the government open.
We passed a clean continuing resolution 2 weeks ago. So we gave Democrats plenty of time to voice any concerns that they had. But this is a clean continuing resolution. It is not a government funding bill that we passed that is full of conservative priorities, Republican priorities. It's not a partisan bill. It's in fact the same piece of legislation that Democrats have voted on 13 times in the past. So we did our job. We sent that over to the Senate, and Senate Democrats simply rejected it. So this is a shutdown that was created by Democrats, and I hope that they will come to their senses and get us out of this.
One of the main sticking points is over the enhanced tax credits for the Affordable Care Act, which are set to expire at the end of the year. Democrats want to make them permanent. And I'm wondering, where are you on this?
Where I am is saying simply that that has nothing to do with the continuing resolution. And we've got plenty of time to debate what those tax credits look like. There's a lot of problems with those, by the way, but those don't run out until the end of this year. That's 3 months. That is a lifetime in politics.
Up next, meet the Democrat challenging Governor Greg Abbott, why he's trying again 8 years after the first campaign, when Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas returns. Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Now to 2026 and one of the big races we'll be following next year, the governor's race. Democrat Andrew White is running against Governor Greg Abbott. He ran back in 2018 but lost to Dallas County Sheriff Lupe Valdez in the primary runoff. White calls himself an independent Democrat as he takes on Abbott, who is seeking a fourth term and may have $100 million in his campaign account.
Well, I'm the same person I was in 2017, but back in 2017, the party was a little bit different. We were talking about identity politics, and, I didn't quite fit the mold. And now I'm the same person today as I was back then, but I think the party's ready for me because Democrats want a candidate who can win in November, and I'm the right candidate for that.
Now, you call yourself an independent Democrat. What exactly does that mean, and how does that guide your positions?
Sure. An independent Democrat is someone who will work with anybody to make progress on the important issues facing our state. So that means I'm willing to work with obviously progressives and moderates from my own party, but also invite independents into the party and work with reasonable Republicans on these complicated issues that are facing us today. So our schools, for instance, our schools are in the bottom half of the nation. We're Texas. We should be in the top 10 in the nation. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we're not going to do it by tweeting against each other on social media. We're not going to do that by, running the moderates out of our party, which is what Greg Abbott did recently when he primaried so many moderates in his own party so he could pass the private school voucher bill. So the only way we're going to make real progress is if we do it together. And I've got 30 years as an entrepreneur. My skill set is to bring people together. I'm a team builder.
Why do you think you are the best Democrat in this race? Others may get in as well. And you said before that your goal is to bring together progressives and moderates and independents. How will you do that?
Sure. You know, we as a party haven't run a businessman against Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott's a 30-year politician, and he's been running against other politicians. And you guys know that you got to do something different if you want to expect different results. And so I'm an entrepreneur. You know, Greg doesn't want to run against me because I can, I have the skill set and the experience. I've started 4 companies and exited 4 companies over 30 years. I have a reputation for being a tough competitor, but a fair dealer at the same time.
If you are to win the primary and go on to the general election, you'll be asking Texas voters to fire Governor Abbott. And the state, as you know, at least from a business standpoint, is doing very well right now. It's on a roll as far as employment, as far as new jobs, companies, et cetera. So why should Texans fire Governor Abbott in your mind?
Jack, I think you missed it. Yeah, there's a lot going on for Texas right now. Our land, our people, our food for sure, but there's so much more that we could be doing, right? So our schools are in the bottom half. We've talked about that. To attract the additional businesses and jobs that we want to attract, you have to have schools in the top 10 or at least in the top half, right? We've lost 20 hospitals in Texas. They've closed up. They've gone bankrupt directly because of the decisions that Greg Abbott made when he refused to expand Medicaid, right? Thousands of jobs were lost because of Greg Abbott's decision. And he did that solely because it was called Obamacare. Only 9 other governors made that decision. It's a horrible decision. It's cost lives and it's cost jobs. And then, on infrastructure, we have, obviously a huge need for infrastructure in our state. My son was in the 4th of July flood. He was a counselor in one of the worst hit cabins. We got woken up with the same text messages that a lot of parents got woken up with that morning, and we didn't know what was going on. So we rushed down to Hunt, Texas, and we found out that, thank God he was alive. And we're really proud of him and his 3 other co-counselors who did such a good job as a counselor with their little boys. But we shouldn't have to live in a world like that. Greg Abbott's really good at showing up after the tragedy happens, but not so good at preparing us before the tragedy happens. And so as governor, that's the approach I want to take. And frankly, that's why I think we should fire Greg Abbott. It's time for a new culture and a new way of doing things.
Coming up, how President Trump's plan to lower the cost of prescription drugs may work when Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas comes right back. Now to the redistricting battle over the state's new congressional maps. Last week, a 3-judge panel at federal court in El Paso began hearing testimony to determine whether the new maps aimed at giving Republicans 5 extra seats will be allowed for the March 2026 primary. Democrats and multiple organizations, including LULAC, accuse Republicans of racially discriminating against Latinos, blacks, and Asians by not giving them fair representation and diluting their votes. Republicans deny that, saying they only considered partisan advantage, something the courts have upheld.
President Trump got 56% of the vote in the last election, and yet a very large chunk of the congressional delegation is Democrat. And so what the legislature did is redrew the map to elect likely 5 more Republicans. The result of that is you'll have a congressional delegation that better reflects the values of the people of Texas, of the voters of Texas. I think that is right and good.
It is hard to believe that you could be this meticulous to the extent that you have a majority minority state, but somehow approximately a little over 70% of the seats are going to be Anglo seats. That has to be intentional. There is no other way to make that make sense. You had to intentionally, specifically go around people of color, pack them and crack them, and that's exactly what they did in these maps.
The federal judges could issue a ruling on these maps in the next week. President Trump has unveiled a new government website called Trump RX, aimed at lowering the cost of some prescription drugs. Sarah Jenkins explains in the brief.
president's announcement about Trump RX comes days after he said that the U.S. would begin imposing a 100% tariff on any branded or patented pharmaceutical product, quote, unless a company is building their pharmaceutical manufacturing plant in America. That move could increase the costs of some drugs for U.S. consumers. Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla said on Tuesday that the impending tariffs did motivate his company. He said that President Trump gave Pfizer a 3-year grace period on the tariffs, and the tariffs would be inapplicable as long as Pfizer manufactures in the U.S. The president also said that tariffs had, quote, played a big role in the deal, and that other companies are on board too. The details of the Trump RX website have not yet been shared, but a senior administration official expects the website to be live in early 2026. For The Brief, I'm Sarah Jenkins.
Thank you, Sarah. You can watch all our full interviews from today's show on our CBS Texas YouTube page. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button. That's Eye on Politics for this week. Thank you for watching. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. I'll see you again next week. And from all of us here, have a great Sunday.